Money, consumption, status, and power have long driven our culture's pulse. They've shaped our motivations, our behaviors, and our beliefs. But what happens when we give art the same influence? Writers, designers, musicians, photographers, videographers, and the world's most creative minds have the power to heal us, challenge us, and guide us back home to ourselves. In their hands and through their crafts, we find a new world, one where art is a catalyst for powerful change, where self-expression, human connection, and deep empathy are the world's richest assets. This is Art is the New Wall Street, with your host, Morgan Short.
Hi, artists and creatives. Welcome back to Art is the New Wall Street. I'm welcoming an incredible guest to the show tonight who I'm pumped to catch up with. Her name is Mary Castillo. Mary is a renowned boudoir photographer and educator who has hosted multiple workshops, spoken at events, and hosts photography sessions that empower people to embrace their bodies and elevate their self-confidence, which is a mission I can get behind. Mary began as a stay-at-home mom and was seeking a creative outlet. And today, her passion has blossomed into a full-time business and income within the world of art and entrepreneurship. We're going to talk all about her journey to finding photography and building her business, why representation and inclusivity in art is so important, and learn a bit more about her creative process. So, Mary, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Mary, I wanted to actually start with a dinner party question.
Okay, perfect.
So, if there was a Mary Castillo action figure, and there was a premium version of your action figure that came with one or two accessories, what would the accessories be? And what would your catchphrase be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I have not heard that question before. It can be any accessory, not like my normal day-to-day accessories.
Yes.
Okay, as an action figure, I think a camera, just inevitably, because the nature of my job, and I feel lucky that I get to take my art anywhere with me. I would say my other one, as lame as it is like coffee to keep me going.
Oh, yes.
Would be my action figure.
Yeah. Coffee drink.
Yeah, my coffee drink. I'm kind of all over the place. I'm not like a go-to person, but my staple is an iced Americano. Like you can go no wrong.
Nice.
Yeah.
What would your catchphrase be?
I think let's love ourselves and keep going.
Heck yes. Let's love ourselves and keep going.
Right.
Mary, tell us about your photography journey. What initially drew you to the camera?
Yes. So initially it was kind of something that fell in my lap that I didn't realize I was kind of practicing my whole life until I was already deep into my business. So at the time, I was a new stay-at-home mom. I was living in Colorado at this time, and my partner made enough income for me to stay at home, but I was really excited to stay home with my child, and I love him dearly, but I was kind of going crazy, like not having anything for myself. I'm like a double Capricorn, so like work is very much embraced in my life. And so it was a matter of me getting into photography to not only have a creative outlet, but more so I was thinking of it as like a part-time income and kind of a purpose for myself. And my husband used to do photography for fun. So he had all the equipment. He knew how to edit. He had all the editing tools and software. And he was like, well, I'm not using it when I'm at my 9 to 5. So why don't you just practice? I'll teach you how to use the camera and stuff like that. So I was really fortunate that I had all the tools in my lap already. I originally started just by doing family photo shoots whenever on the weekends and stuff like that. And I liked it, but it felt very much a job and not creative because, especially since I was living in Colorado and I was living pretty close to the mountains, everyone wanted to go to the same spot to get the same photos over and over again, which is like the nature of family photography. So at first it was really cool and it quickly got not creative and not exciting over time. So I wasn't really thinking of it as a creative outlet at the time. It was more so just a part-time job. And then I randomly had a woman reach out to me and ask if I had ever done Boudoir before because she was interested and she liked my editing style and everything. And I was like, I'm going to be honest, no, but if you're willing to give me a shot, like I'd love to try. And she was. And it's so funny thinking back to that. I'm actually still friends with her today because I didn't know her prior. And I charged her like $50. She came to my bedroom at my apartment in Colorado because I was like, I don't know anything about renting studios. My bedroom has really good lighting. So I made my husband take our baby and the dogs out so she wouldn't feel uncomfortable. And when she came in, which it's not an issue, but she was a plus size woman. And then all of a sudden I got really nervous in my head that I was like, I don't know what her self-love journey looks like. I don't know what she's insecure about. I don't know any of this background information of her. And now I'm kind of freaking out because I don't want to ruin that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even necessarily, now when I look back on that, I could have still had those same thoughts even if she was not a plus size woman. Like, I don't know what anyone's self-love journey looks like. And I realized I should have done way more research before I did that first boudoir shoot, but I had never done it before. And we did the photo shoot and she loved the photos. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that you love them so much. Like, that was more important to me than me loving the photos. And after that, I was like, oh, this is it for sure. Like, I love it. I can get creative with it. I am not chasing kids around who don't want to be there. I'm not chasing parents, sometimes dads who don't want to be there and stuff. So I was like, okay, this is it for sure. Like, I love this so much and let's roll with it. I kind of had a hard time though when I was living in Colorado because family photos, you get a lot of return on clients because whether they're coming in spring, in fall, or coming yearly. So kind of making that transition out was hard. So when we moved back to Minnesota, because I'm from Minnesota originally, I was like, okay, I'm only doing boudoir. Like, don't ask me for family photos. I'm just going to put it out there. This is what I want to do. So it worked out really well that I could kind of start with a clean slate when I came back here.
And you knew right away after that session, I'm going to keep doing more of these and offering more of these.
Totally.
It was like
totally
birthed right then.
Yeah. Well, I think during the session, I loved it for what we were doing, but I think hearing how much she loved the photos too really solidified it for me because she wrote me a long email about how good she felt in her body and everything. And I was like, if someone like most of us don't love every single thing about our bodies. So for you to come back and tell me in detail how much you love these photos and how much of a confidence boost it was, I was like, okay, so this actually matters. And I can get creative with it. So it's like a double win. Like, it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you moved back to Minnesota. What year was that?
I want to say it was 2019 when we moved back. So I've been doing it full time ever since then. I tried to dabble in the wedding photography world a little bit when moving back here. And really the only reason why I started getting into weddings is I built this narrative in my head that in order to make full-time money and income, that I had to do weddings. And for me, that I was like, that's where the money's at. So you just have to do weddings, but still continue with the boudoir on the side. And quickly I realized I hate weddings. I hate wedding photography. I mean, I eloped. I only had 5 people at my wedding, including us. So I was just like, this is not my jam, but I'm making really good money. And so it took me a couple of years to get out of it. But once I realized, like, no, you don't have to do that to make a full-time income, it was like the best revelation that I ever went through for my photography. And I feel like it's kind of inspiring. And I love to tell people that who are in boudoir photography, who are still doing weddings, because that's a very real thing that people are doing and like going through. But it's like, you don't have to do weddings to make money. I promise there's money other places too.
Oh my gosh. I've spoken with a few photographers who feel the same way, who love weddings, and all the more power to photographers who do love weddings. And
for sure. Bless them.
Of course. And, I think you're speaking to something that artists all over feel. regardless if it's photography or another form of art, is I don't know how I'm going to make money doing the part of this that I love. Can you speak to how you started finding your way, saying to yourself, actually, I don't have to do weddings? How did you start teaching yourself? How did you find your way? How did you start pricing things?
Yeah. So the boudoir photographer community in Minnesota, we have a good amount of them, but it's a very small, tight-knit community. And I am so blessed to be friends with most of them. So I was charging way less than everybody, but I was doing at one point, like probably more shoots than anybody else. And I had a boudoir photographer reach out to me and she was like, I love you, but you need to raise your prices. You deserve to. Your work is so great, but also all of us are going to eventually hate you if you don't raise your prices because your work quality is getting better than us, but you're charging way less than all of us. And I was like, oh, and I had never met her before. She's very bold. I'm still friends with her today. And she is a godsend. We went out to dinner and she talked me through. And in the boudoir photography world, pricing wise, there's two different structures to it. So there is a structure that most people start with, which is called shoot and burn. So a client comes in, I take a bunch of photos of them, I edit a bunch of photos to them, and then I just send off a really massive big gallery for a small amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to switch over to in-person sales. And what that means is the person pays me a retainer, which usually includes or sometimes includes hair and makeup. It's almost like a deposit. It's basically paying for the session itself. And either the same day or for me, I do it about 2 to 3 weeks later. The client comes back to the studio and we actually view all of their photos together, edited.
Cool.
If you do it the same day, they're only a little bit edited, just like a light preset on it. But for me, I have them come back 2 weeks later so they can see the photos fully edited.
Cool.
That just works better for me timing wise. And I just like for them to see them fully imagined. And I also really enjoy editing. So I'm okay editing the full gallery. So it's kind of a nice experience for me. And it's more of a luxury experience because they come in back to the studio. We sit down. I have a slideshow. Sometimes we laugh. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we get really emotional about seeing ourselves in that way. And then from there, they pick which photos they want, whether it's digital photos or an album or wall art or something like that. So I kind of knew about in-person sales, but I didn't know too much. And it was like a whole scary world to get into that. And so she really guided me through. And I reached out to a lot of other mentors of mine to get into that place, which comes with a lot of money. But I waited a long, long time to go in there because I didn't want to be over the top expensive. I wanted everyone to feel good about themselves and experience this. So I definitely went through a couple of years where I was like, I would do this for free just for the enjoyment of me taking the photos. And I love the creative process. And because I want everyone to feel good in their skin, but also to like, I have to make money and I can't be scraping by or shooting weddings because I need to make an income. So it probably took me a lot longer than most people did to make that leap, but I'm glad I don't regret taking that long and kind of struggling a little bit or going through weddings and stuff like that, because I really needed to feel comfortable in my experience that I was going to provide with a client and comfortable with the knowledge I had. And even there's so much like psychological portion that goes into speaking to someone when they're basically dressing nude for you and not ruining their self-worth. So to me, it was very important to get all that education and make sure I was going to master it before I was going to charge like a price like that.
So learning from mentors and getting aligned with the community and in the cities. When you decided to dive all in with boudoir, how did you start learning the world? I'm especially interested in posing your clients that come in.
Totally. It's so funny. People ask me all the time, even like during a session, because we're just like going through poses like this. And sometimes clients are like, how do you know all of these? And I'm like, I'm on Instagram 24/7. So that was my first answer, was just following every boudoir photographer I could ever imagine. And I have an album in my phone saved for inspiration that I just look at randomly. But over time, my posing's changed a lot. I actually won during COVID a virtual mentorship with my favorite boudoir photographer in the whole entire planet. She was doing a giveaway for like a Zoom mentorship to talk about anything you wanted to for a couple hours. And I happened to win it. And that was like the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me in my whole entire life. And now we host a boudoir workshop together and she's like my best friend.
Oh,
So it's like it like still gives me chills, even though she is my best friend and everything. I'm like, the fact that it started, that I cried when I won this giveaway. I was so elated. And to see now that we're on our third workshop that we're hosting together, like still gives me chills.
It's funny the way that the universe rewards you when you're standing in your vocation, the opportunity
Totally.
that you get when you are figuring out your purpose and giving yourself that gift of exploring boudoir photography. I believe you were meant to win that giveaway.
Oh, 100%. It's probably like she's just as excited as I am, but it's still every time we like start planning our next one, I'm like, if you told me in 2020 that this is where we would be, I would not believe you for a second, because she still is like such an inspiration to me. Shout out to Ashley Jackson. She is just amazing at what she does. She's amazing in how she speaks to clients and education and the whole experience she gives to everybody. I still, every time we host a workshop together, I am off on the side with a notebook, like writing things down and still learning from her. So it's truly an honor to be now a colleague of her.
Absolutely. What goes down at the workshops?
So we teach a workshop called Farah. It's for the warm and gentle side of boudoir, because there's definitely different genres to boudoir photography. There's people who are dark and moody, light and airy, like spicy boudoir. And we were trying to figure out like, what is our genre? Because ours is very similar. We're definitely the PG, warm and gentle side of boudoir, like not over the top, more chill, like relaxed posing, which funny enough in boudoir, getting those chill, relaxed poses out of clients who aren't models, like our everyday people, are clients who don't model on a daily basis. That's kind of harder to pose a person who doesn't know what they're doing versus like putting them in a really like posed pose where they don't have to move. So there was definitely a market for it to teach people how to get them comfortable in those type of poses. So at our workshop, we go through our client communication and our client experience before leading into the shoot, because building a relationship with them is like what's going to get you good photos. If they don't trust you, then you're not going to get a good experience from either of you. Then we also talk a little bit about our editing process, and then we will each go through how we pose our clients and our ideal poses and just kind of prompts that we do. I also teach artificial lighting because that's something that I'm super passionate about lately. And then we actually set up usually anywhere from like 4 to 6 styled shoots. So the photographers who attend it can actually apply everything that they learned, and we can be next to them while they're doing it. And then they also have those photos to walk away with, so they can start promoting their business in that way if they're trying to go in the direction of that. Cool. And we try and pick like models of all diversities and sizing and stuff like that. That's something that's super important to us too. So that kind of gives us the leg up. But when it comes to boudoir workshops as well, you're kind of getting half and half. So it's not just either just education or a styled shoot. It's a really good mix of both. But we also have a cocktail party with them. Like, we want to be their best friend. We want to be their mentor, and for them to be able to come back to us. So we call it our Farah family, and we're very close with all of them.
Do most of your clients have a reason why they are coming to you to do boudoir?
I would say it's definitely shifted year to year. And I also go through like different phases with my clients too. Originally, most people were only getting boudoir photos done mainly for a wedding present. So it was typically brides who were getting it done as then they would get an album printed and give it to their soon-to-be partner the day before the wedding or etc. So brides were primarily my clientele for a long time. As years have gone by, with self-love, I don't want to say being a trend, but more important to people, I would say I get a lot of people for like 30th birthdays or 40th birthdays or like some sort of monumental birthday. I've gotten people who are just like, I just don't feel good about myself lately, and I would love to start feeling good about myself. I have gotten people who are recovering from an eating disorder. I've gotten people who have unfortunately gone through sexual assault and are like reclaiming their body in this situation. So kind of all walks of life. And I would say brides is definitely only like 25% of my clientele now. And it's more so people just having a different reason to do it for themselves, which is so great to see.
How powerful to be able to
Mm-hmm.
give that to somebody.
Yeah, definitely.
How beautiful to allow people to be home in their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous. That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important for art to be inclusive?
I would say specifically my genre of work, I really went into boudoir knowing that body positivity and the size of our body was going to be the foundation of this job, which it still very much is, because a lot of people are coming to me because either they are very comfortable or very uncomfortable with how their body looks. And as time went on, I started to realize it was so much more than just about the size of their body. And it was really about race and gender identity and sexuality and things like that. If you are coming to me and you are not female identifying, if you are not straight, I'm okay if you come to me if you are not white and you are Black or Hispanic or anything. And so I think within art, it's just important to show that, especially in different fields of art, I feel like it can get really profiled to be towards one ethnicity, one type of person.
Yes.
Whether it's like in painting or graphic design and stuff like that, we just kind of stereotype who is going to be doing that. And so really with my work, it's important to show that every single person, no matter what you're doing, is deserving of having photos taken of them. It doesn't matter if you're a mom. It doesn't matter if you're Hispanic. It doesn't matter if you're queer. It doesn't matter any of that. You deserve to have photos taken of you. And same with anybody who's working in an industry. Like it sucks to hear, like, if a graphic designer is like, oh, that's such a predominantly white field or something like that, that we build those stereotypes. And I'm sure I'm sure there's stereotypes that I don't know about in different fields because I'm not an expert in that field. But I even saw a speaker. I went to a boudoir photography workshop last year in Vegas, and her name is Alicia Haskett, I believe. And she was talking about how boudoir is not necessarily inclusive to Black women or Hispanic women or women of color, because their bodies are so sexualized and have been so sexualized for having curves and stuff like that. So more people of color tend to not get a boudoir session of themselves because they have been over sexualized. So they don't need that anymore. So I think it's everywhere. There's so many stereotypes in every single industry, whether it's art or non-art and everything. So it's so important.
I think it's so important to see yourself reflected in art of any kind, especially in like movies and paintings and pictures and all of that. I'm fortunate. I have a lot of privilege. I am a white straight woman and I saw a lot of that, So I love what you stand for. I love the mission. I love the inclusivity that I see from your page, which, by the way, let's talk about social media and how you use social media to promote what you do.
Instagram is like definitely a big tool of how I show what I'm doing, because it's an app about posting photos, and that's what I do for a living. I was just at an event for women in business yesterday, and it was, I would say 99% of the people who attended were either in like the esthetician or cosmetology world. And I was nervous that I didn't have anything to say to them about representation because I was like, we're in very different industries. But I realized that it went along with that a lot. And so when I notice, I am very aware of who I'm posting on my Instagram page 24/7 because all I do is post photos of people. And so sometimes I'll look at my page and I'm like, wow, every single person on here is a skinny white woman. And I'm like, that's not okay because you are not showing representation in your feed then. And then people who are plus size or of color or of anything else are not going to want to hire me. Like I don't have a gallery to show people. I don't have like, this is basically me showing my proof of work is in my Instagram. So social media is very, very important to me. So I will go out of my way if I notice that. For example, if I've already posted photos of someone who is of color or a plus size and whatnot, I don't want to repost them. So I will go out of my way to reach out to people who fit those types and offer them a free session. And in exchange for me being able to show their photos if they're okay with that. And we'll go out of my way. That's important to me to say F the money. And I will go out of my way to do that so I can show that on my page because I want to see that I am inclusive. I am okay with anyone who walks through this door. And that is my job. That is not anyone else's job to show that. Shouldn't have to prove to people. It's like I can bite that money to go out of my way to do that. And I'm happy to do that. I still do like model shoots or creative shoots with my friends all the time because I still want to make this a fun job for me. I don't want it to be just a job. So that is my job to go out of my way on social media to reach out to people, to make everyone and to show all walks of life on my page 24/7. There should never be a lull of people that you don't see anyone of any representation on my page.
Wow. Thank you, Mary. First of all, I want to acknowledge you because I think that, often as business owners, we say one thing and then it's almost performative. It's not actually true. But in your behavior and in the way that you run your business, you truly, really mean it. And it's ingrained in every step.
Totally.
Piece. So that's gorgeous. And thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so important to me. And I mean, I'm a half Mexican woman, part indigenous. I consider myself queer. I am not a size 0. So even in my boudoir journey, I've been doing it for 6 years and I didn't do my own boudoir session until a year ago. And people would harp on me all the time. Like, you have to do it. You have to like put yourself in their shoes and blah, 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 and walk the walk. And I was like, I know that and I understand that, but I also will wait it out for the right photographer who I know is showing that representation and is showing the art. And I appreciate that because that matters more to me because I know how I view myself, that I want the perfect person to do the first shoot. And I actually waited out until that friend that I was mentioning, when she flew out for our first workshop, then that was my first boudoir session.
And tell me about the emotions and experience for you going through your first boudoir session.
I tried to not think about it a bunch because we were doing our first workshop and then the boudoir session was going to be after, which it was an advantage to me because I didn't want to overthink it. And if I didn't have the distraction of the workshop before, I would have overthought it. And it was kind of like, okay, the workshop's done. All of the technicness is done. The night before, I was like, oh, I am doing my own boudoir session tomorrow. And I freaked out a little bit, which I'm sure every client of mine has said the same thing. But doing it, I was semi-nervous because it was someone I knew.
Yes.
But now looking back at the photos, I'm like, oh my gosh, Mary, everyone's like, don't you wish you did it sooner? And I was like, no, because I'm so glad I waited out for the perfect person.
Absolutely.
Because if I hadn't waited for the perfect person, there's a chance I would have never done a boudoir session for myself again. Because looking back on the photos, if I didn't have a good experience in the moment and I didn't love the photos, it would have been tough for me. And I'm sure a lot of people who've gotten a boudoir session will say the same thing.
Have you seen any of your clients come through just shy and in their shell? I don't want photos of me, but I want this for whatever reason you mentioned earlier. And then they do the shoot, they see the photos, and they're like unlocked or transformed.
Oh, most of my clients. It's a very vulnerable thing to come to a stranger and strip down to whatever your comfortability is to sometimes it's almost nothing. Sometimes it's just underwear and things like that. So I would say 90% of my job is really making people feel comfortable with me. And then 10% of it is the photos, because if they're not comfortable with me, we're not going to get good photos. Because if they are a shy person, even sometimes when someone comes to me and I can tell that they're more timid and whatnot, it's like, okay, then I have to put in that extra work to get you to trust me. So my clients will come and they get hair and makeup done, and I sit with them the whole entire time they're getting makeup done, and we have conversation the whole entire time. So there is already an hour of us getting to know each other, and I will ask a million questions, and sometimes I get the craziest stories. And it's almost like being a hairstylist, like you hear the craziest stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, you didn't just come to me and then I was like, okay, time to get undressed. Like having that hair and makeup portion is so important, because it's like we need that one-on-one FaceTime as like normal people before we just get into this. And then during that, I mean, it's been a lot of training, and I've done a lot of research on how to make people feel comfortable in that situation. And I show them every single pose. If I don't show them the pose, I have an assistant that does. And it took me a long time to find an assistant, but I love her to death. And she is like my best friend. And she's also just as good at showing body love and whatnot. And so, yeah, there needs to be so much communication beforehand in order to make them feel comfortable. But then to see them blossom is the best thing ever. Like I was saying earlier, when we have those reveal sessions, I mean, I can't tell you how many people have cried, and then I cry. Like just seeing themselves like that is not a norm for people who tend to be shyer. So it's like the most amazing experience.
2 questions. The first is, I'm curious about what kind of questions you're asking them when you sit down for that hair and makeup session. And then the second one is, I want to know what kind of things you hear when they're viewing those portraits. So let's go to the first one, which again is, what kind of questions are you asking to get comfortable with them?
So even before that, just because I have so many people that come to me from social media, I've learned, as much as I don't want to sometimes, putting my whole life out there on social media, I already have a connection with this person, because so many of my clients come to me from Instagram. So they were like, the fact that they seeing me share about my personal life, we already have something to kind of talk about, which is really a good icebreaker for us. I have a 1-year-old, and basically all of 2023, I was suffering so intensely from postpartum depression, and I was very vocal about it. And I've connected with so many of my clients because of it. Or even down to something as silly, like it was years ago, but I went back in my photo bucket. I don't know if you ever had photo bucket like during the MySpace days.
Back in the MySpace days. Shout out to MySpace for helping me learn how to code, sort of.
Literally. So I paid $5 to get into my old photo bucket. My partner used to be even more like an emo kid than I was. And I put all of our pictures just making fun of it. I have had so many people, like so many clients, talk about that, because I had just like threw our whole life out there and connect with us. So it's like, that's part of my job really is social media, is putting myself out there. So they already have like a face and a personality when they come and get hair and makeup done. And I've realized, is like I was saying, as much as I don't want to sometimes, it's made my business so much better. And then usually when they come and get hair and makeup done, I usually like, what do you do? I already, backtracking a little bit, I have an email prep guide that I send on that's like this huge prep guide of everything that you need to know to get ready for your boudoir shoot, down to what you're going to wear. If you want to remove body hair, if you want to self tan, if you don't have to, and down to like psychologically what you should do to get ready for it, because it is a scary thing to do. So there's a lot in there. And I actually ask a lot of questions in there because I don't want to pressure them to have to answer in person and feel nervous about it. So I kind of ask things like, why are you doing this? Do you have any mobility issues? What are your nerves going into it? What are your excitements going into it? And so we can kind of already have a foundation to go off on when they're getting their hair and makeup done. So then when they're getting hair and makeup, it's usually like, let's talk about those again. Let's talk about like everyday life situations and stuff too. And it's kind of like a more of a little like gab sesh. Like, we're not going to talk about the boudoir shoot the whole time. Like, let's just chit chat and be friends. So you're comfortable with me when we have to do that part.
What an act of love in creating the art.
Truly like best friends with all of my clients because of how much I have emphasized that I want you to know me just as much as I know you. So you're comfortable in this situation. So it's like, I probably follow on social media every single one of my clients I've ever had.
Wow. Yeah. The review with the client. Yeah. What are they feeling in that review? What have you heard from them?
So I will say, like most people who are gift receivers, sometimes people are like, I just don't react a lot when I get gifts, which was another big reason why I waited so long to do it, because I was like, what if they hate them and I'm sitting right next to them? And and I've learned to just come to the realization that some people just don't react as much as others, which is fine. And I don't take offense to it because everyone still is walking away with photos. And it's funny, the people who don't say anything to me in person will send me the longest email after they get home or leave the longest review of how much they loved it. And I'm very much a processor. So I understand that. Like, I need to process how I feel about it and then put it into words later on. But I have had people cry and just say, like, it was a whole set of nerves going into the photo shoot and actually doing the act of the photo shoot. And then they had a whole different set of nerves going in and seeing the photos, because a lot of people don't like photos of themselves. I'm a photographer and I don't love photos myself. I think you have to be very particular for me to like a photo of myself. So it's like a whole different set of nerves, and I can see the nerves when they're walking in for that session because they almost look a little bit more nervous than they did the first time.
Oh.
And so I tend to there's a song that always plays, like a very uplifting song when we watch it. We sit down, it's very calm. I put the same candle on that I lit while they were doing the photo shoot, because like bringing back to like the aromatherapy of being in the photo shoot and how good they felt in the moment then. And I'll usually ask them before we sit down and watch it, like, how are you feeling? Are you excited? Are you nervous? And I won't wait too long. I won't press too long. And I will give them my laptop to hold in their laps so they can like hold it and experience themselves. And I've had people stop the photo, like the slideshow, and be like, midway being like, I can't believe this is me. I think that's the number one thing that's said, is I cannot believe this is me. And it's like, well, yeah, it's you. We never have a reason in our adult lives to like book a solo photo shoot for ourselves, even if it's fully clothed, like besides headshots. Like, most people are not just going around and asking people to take photos of them unless they're a model and like trying to get into that industry. Right. So not only to get a photo shoot for yourself in your adult life, but then also like down to almost nothing sometimes, the number one response is like, I still can't believe that's me. And it's like, well, it is. And look how amazing you look. So just like me reinforcing that is like the best feeling ever.
Wow, what a beautifully intricate and emotional experience.
Mm-hmm. It does get very emotional sometimes. Sometimes I've had clients bring a friend with them and they're like hooting and hollering for themselves the whole time and stuff. It's funny because there's a lot of different experiences, but like the people who cry and break down are like my favorite ones for sure.
Absolutely. You are sharing so much of yourself with social media, with your clients, with the world, really, to promote your business. And I think this is something that both business owners and artists sometimes struggle with is I don't want to be out on social media. I don't want to have to share and promote myself in order to get business. So what would you say to them? What kind of benefits has doing that brought your business? And how do you get over the hump of being scared to do that?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, there's so many different reasons why it's benefited. For one, every time I post a story or like a personal situation of mine, someone has came back to relate to. And especially if it's a hard situation that I'm going through, most people want to find others who have gone through that situation to connect with that person. So the hard stuff is harder to put out, but it gives me the most reward, honestly. Like I post funny things about my kids or my day-to-day life and someone will like laugh about it. But when I post hard stuff, I I not only gain because I have so many people reach out and make me feel not alone, but then it already makes them feel comfortable in wanting to go along in my art journey with me and hopefully potentially book me.
Absolutely.
It's so important. It's so hard to get over the hump because you don't think it's going to matter. You don't think anybody's going to care. But unfortunately, with social media, like the number one key to social media is consistency.
Yep.
So the first like week you post, the first month you post, the first year you post, not a lot of people are going to see it because you don't post often. And so they're not going to respond. I've chose to like keep up with it. I definitely have like my downtimes that I don't want to, but within the past like 8 months, I've really kept up with it. And now that I'm consistent, no matter when I post, someone relates to it. So therefore, a following has grown. I've reached more people who can refer me to more people to then having more people to connect with me. Like I've had people book me because they were like, I've been thinking about this for a long time, never really found anybody, found your Instagram and was like, I love your work, so I might as well do it. Getting a boudoir shoot is never at the top of anyone's priority. It's not a necessity by any means. It is a luxury thing to book. Sometimes you just need to see someone consistently or be reminded of it, being like, okay, I don't think about this day to day. I'm not like waking up thinking about when I'm going to book a boudoir shoot, but I follow Mary and she's been posting every day and keeps reminding me of it. So you know what? Let's do it.
That's exactly how I found your work. I found you on Instagram. Our paths crossed in childhood. We danced at the same studio.
Yep.
But reconnected recently because I found her page and I was like, wow, I have never thought about doing boudoir, but I have really deeply rooted body image issues. And I think it could be really helpful for me. And I haven't done one yet, but I'm working up the courage to maybe do one at some point. And especially with, as you were saying, more luxury service, you're going to need to be at the top of somebody's mind who's going to book you because it's not an impulse type of thing. And it's not always tied to an event either or a milestone in life.
Totally. 2 summers ago, we went to like some random art pop-up event at a brewery, and there was an artist that me and my partner absolutely fell in love with. They're a painter, and followed them on Instagram. They kept consistently posting on Instagram. They eventually followed me back. And now I've never like spent that much on art, but I finally did because it was like, okay, you keep popping up in my mind because you keep showing up on social media. And now it's like, we need one of these pieces. We've been following them forever and we just need to bite the bullet. But that's not a necessity. It's just the fact that they kept in our brain by posting consistently that we finally bought one.
You heard it from Mary. Artists, get on social media, promote yourself, be consistent. Your art deserves to be seen.
Mhm.
and you deserve to share it. And
Totally. And it's like, it's hard, but it's never hurting. Even if you get one like, or one person that follows you or something, it's like, that's one more person that you had before you joined it. And it's only going to benefit you in the end.
and as far as showing up as yourself and even posting, you mentioned that you post some like harder stuff and more authentic stuff. People don't want to be sold to. They want to learn from humans. They want to
Mhm.
connect with other humans. And so when they see something that resonates from you, immediately it's so much deeper than a purchase or a transaction. It's much more empathetic. It's much more human. It's a relationship and not just, a purchase.
Even with that painter, the fact that they followed me back and were messaging me and was like, "Oh, I'm a fan of yours." I was like, well, now I feel even more excited to buy this from you because now we have a relationship and I know who you are as a person and whatnot. So yeah, it's never going to hurt you. It's a lot to start, but once it's a habit, once you do it consistently, it's going to be a habit, like an everyday thing. I started going down the TikTok path about 6 months ago, and it's rough and it's hard and a lot of people complain about it, but now it's just like so much of my everyday life that it doesn't stress me out really.
If you would be willing to talk a little bit about this, you mentioned that you had postpartum depression. How did that impact your creative work and your business?
It was hard because last year, not only was I going through postpartum and I did not experience it my first time around, and it was also very different. When I had my first baby, I didn't have a business. I wasn't doing photography at all. And this time I was very established in my own business. So it was a very different experience from each other. And so when I started to realize that I was going through postpartum, my bookings just tanked.
Mm,
And I definitely thought it was me because I was like, I'm not showing up. I'm not showing up on social media. I'm not like showing my work, blah, blah, blah. I started to really quickly realize that it wasn't just me. It was the economy and like the boudoir photography industry was just going through it, which as much as I don't want to see other people going through it, it kind of made me feel better that it wasn't
of course.
just me.
Yeah.
So last year I learned a lot, not getting business and finally going through and like reaching out to like a psychologist and getting help and medication and whatnot. I learned a lot, but through the whole process, was feel very happy now that even when I didn't have bookings, I was still like begging my friends to do photo shoots for me and still do it and still work on things. And actually, last year when I was going through it is when we started the boudoir workshop and stuff like that. So
Well,
it really proved to me now that I'm out of it and doing so much better that I was like, I'm not doing this job for the money because that going back, the hard thing before the year I was pregnant and doing business financially, that was the best year I've ever done in my whole entire life. I got to a point where I was making more than my partner did while being a stay-at-home mom. Like I was on top of the world.
yep. Yep.
I had the baby and then everything just went from like 0 to 100. So it affected every part of my life.
Of course.
And so to now look back on it and to see that I started a boudoir workshop with a colleague of mine, that I was still begging people to do photo shoots, even if I wasn't getting paid for it or I was paying for it, or I really got into learning artificial lighting and stuff. It really proved to me, it's like, I'm not in this job for the money as much as that last year was. And I was making all that money. I still love this job and I still want to continue doing it. Even if I have to DoorDash, like I would still be doing the art of it because I love it. And so I'm just so happy that I didn't give up. And there was really not much of an inkling for me to ever give up. And it really just like solidified that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Hell yes. You go, mama. Yeah. What advice would you have for a young photographer?
I would say my number one thing is like, just keep shooting as much as you can. And I very much found myself in a place where I was shooting the same thing over and over again because that's what I thought was right to do. And that's what I thought people wanted from me, especially in boudoir shoots. I was trying to do what everybody else was doing. And my work got so much better when I started being creative and doing what I wanted to do.
Yep.
And sometimes people didn't love it and sometimes people did. And so just staying true to yourself. If you find yourself in a place where you're doing what everybody else is doing during your paid sessions, go and do sessions to like get creative and try new things and figure out what your style is and figure out what you love, not what everybody else loves, or figure out like what you love to do in photography. And then you are going to find the clients that trust you wholeheartedly to do whatever you want. When I started my career, people would bring a whole Pinterest board of photos that they wanted to recreate because I didn't have a style to like show and prove to them. And now people are like, I'm just doing what you're telling me what to do because you're the creative, you have the vision, and I'm booking you because of your work. So getting to that point and just like staying true to what you like shooting, I think is the most important thing.
I love it. And if our listeners want to book a session with you, where can they find you? And do you have any upcoming events you want to plug or anything like that?
Yeah, everything on social media is Mary Castillo Photography. So it's marycastillophotography.com. I have all my pricing structure and whatnot on there. Instagram, it's also Mary Castillo Photography. And my upcoming events if anyone is interested in learning boudoir, we do these workshops once in the spring and once in the fall. And they're actually kind of all over. Our first one was in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. Our second one was in Vancouver. Our one in April is in LA. So we're kind of trying to like hit all over the board to connect with more people. So I also offer mentorships if anyone is local. So I'm very happy to teach boudoir just because I want everyone to experience that kind of love for themselves. So.
Wow. Thank you, Mary, for coming on the show.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. It was so fun to catch up with you and to hear all about your business. And to all of our listeners out there, huge thanks for tuning in and hanging out with Mary and I today. Keep creating, keep making magic. Your art is a gift to you and to the world. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Art is the New Wall Street. If you liked what you heard today, give our show a follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find us on social media or at artistthenewwallstreet.com. Keep creating, and we'll see you next time.